Seventh inning, duck and cover, Brooklyn, New York, 1957. Chapter 1. There was a trick to flipping baseball cards. Just the right flick of the wrist, just the right release, just the right spin so that it fluttered and floated to the ground and landed heads up on the picture side or tails up on the stat side. There was a knack to it, an art, and Jimmy Flint was the undisputed card flipping king of PS 161. You gonna flip sometime this century, Clyde? Eric said. Eric Kirkpatrick was the biggest, ugliest kid in the fifth grade. Legend had it he'd been held back not once, but twice. He was also just about the only Yankees fan in the whole neighborhood, probably just because everybody else was a Dodgers fan. But Jimmy didn't care about any of that right now. Jimmy had taken 3 straight cards from him, and now Eric's beloved Yogi Berra card was face down on the playground cement. All Jimmy had to do was land his next card face up beside it, and both cards would be his. Stay back, give him room, Jimmy's friend Ralph said, pushing away the small circle of watchers their game had attracted. Jimmy drew the next card from his deck. Jim Gilliam, second baseman for the Dodgers. Jim Gilliam was just about his favorite baseball player of all time, the Brooklyn Dodger who'd taken over at second base for Jackie Robinson when Jackie moved to the outfield. Jimmy had a special fondness for second base. His mother had played second for the Grand Rapids Chicks back when there was a women's league, and Jimmy himself had spent the last 3 months of one of those seasons at second base, growing inside her. He figured if ever there was a born second baseman, he was it. Come on already, recess is about to end. Jimmy kissed his card, took a moment to get the angle just right, and flicked it. Time slowed as it fluttered end over end, then settled to the ground. It was face up. He'd won. The boys around them erupted, cheering and clapping him on the back. Jimmy added both the cards to his stack, and his friend Ralph raised Jimmy's hand like he was a winning prize fighter. Ladies and gentlemen, the undisputed winner and champion, Jimmy Flint. Give me that back, Eric said. What? Give me that card back, you cheated. Cheated? How? Ralph demanded. He won fair and square. Back off, monkey boy, Eric said. Jimmy's black friend took a step back with the rest of the crowd, and Jimmy couldn't blame them. He was right in Eric's sights, though, and there was nowhere for him to run. Bet you come from a long line of cheaters, don't you, Skin Flint? Bet your dad was a cheater. But, oh, that's right, you don't know who your dad is, do you? Jimmy clenched his fist, but he knew he would never take a swing. Eric would wipe the pavement with him. The circle of boys hid them too well for him to call for help, too. Jimmy couldn't see Mrs. Holloway at all. Eric stepped closer. Come to think of it, I haven't seen your mom around the neighborhood in a while either. Is she off looking for your dad? Eric's friends snickered. My mom's in California. She's a scout for the Dodgers. You sure about that, Skinflint? Eric flicked a finger at the Keep the Dodgers pin on Jimmy's jacket. Or did she finally skip town for good like your stupid baseball team? Get bent, Jimmy said, then immediately wished he hadn't. What's that? Eric said. Did I just hear you tell me to get bent? The class bell rang and Mrs. Holloway called for everyone to come inside. Eric Kirkpatrick shoved Jimmy and he fell, losing his stack of cards and scraping his hands on the cement. Eric kicked the loose cards around with his sneaker and took back all of the ones he'd lost, including the Yogi Berra card. You're the one who's going to get bent, Skinflint, Eric said, after school. Skinflint's going to get bent, one of Eric's goons repeated as they walked away. Back in the classroom, Jimmy sulked at his desk. The rest of the class was buzzing because Mrs. Holloway had turned on the radio. The only other time Jimmy could remember listening to the radio in class was 2 years ago, when Johnny Podres had twirled a shutout to beat the Yankees in Game 7 of the 1955 World Series. It was the only World Series the Dodgers had ever won, and the way things were going, the only World Series they would ever win, at least for Brooklyn. But this time, their teacher tuned in to hear a very different enemy, one far scarier to Jimmy than the dreaded Yankees. Sputnik, the first man-made spacecraft built and launched by the Russians. It was everywhere on the radio, on every station. The Russians had beaten the Americans into space. It's a satellite, Mrs. Holloway explained. She drew a crude picture of the Earth on the blackboard, then drew a circle around it, punctuated by a small white dot. It circles the Earth like our moon does, only much faster and much closer. It looks like a baseball Duke Snider hit into orbit, Ralph said. That got some laughs, but Jimmy wasn't in the mood. Wait, the NBC announcer said. Our observers tell us Sputnik is just now passing over the eastern seaboard. Half of Jimmy's class left their desks and rushed to the windows to look for it, but Mrs. Holloway waved the students back to their seats. Sit down, sit down. You'll be able to see it right now. You'll have to wait until sundown, and you'll probably need binoculars or a telescope. They might not be able to see it, but they could hear it. The radio played the signal live as it passed overhead, a speck in the sky. Beep, 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 beep. It was monotonous, endless, inhuman. Jimmy got goosebumps. Ralph leaned forward to whisper in Jimmy's ear, Man, that's creepy. What does it mean? Betsy Walker asked. It means the commies can drop atomic bombs on us from space, Eric said from across the room. Mrs. Holloway's fifth grade room exploded into chatter, and she tried to calm them down again. Children, children, please calm down. Mrs. Holloway shot Eric an exasperated look. The Russians are not going to drop atomic bombs on us from space or anywhere else, because they know if they do, we'll drop atomic bombs right back on them. But then we'll all be dead, Betsy Walker wailed. Yes, and no one wants that now, do they? Mrs. Holloway said. The radio announcer signaled that the station was going to a commercial, with more Sputnik news to come. And later, of course, more of our ongoing coverage of the crisis in Little Rock, Arkansas, where federal troops. Mrs. Holloway switched off the radio. Enough of that. You'll have nightmares enough as it is. Please open your arithmetic books. The students moaned, but did as they were told. Jimmy heard the beep, beep, beep of Sputnik in his head, but if he couldn't figure some way to sneak out after school, the Russians didn't matter. Eric Kirkpatrick was going to kill him first. While he was supposed to be working on long division, Jimmy calculated the many ways Eric could devise to bring him down. When he was supposed to be learning about adjectives in English class, Jimmy outlined how Eric could modify his face. In music, he noted that Eric could beat him like a wood block. In science, he experimented with the hypothesis that Eric would dissect him. By the time social studies came around at the end of the school day, Jimmy was convinced he would end up stuffed in a locker like a mummy in our sarcophagus, which gave him an idea. That afternoon, Jimmy stood in darkness, straining to hear the slightest sound in the hallway. School had been out for almost an hour, and in the silence, all he could hear was the echo of Sputnik's robotic laugh in his head. Beep, 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 beep. A door handle ka-chunked somewhere down the hall, and Jimmy held his breath. Eric couldn't have hung around this long looking for him, could he? Jimmy closed his eyes and said a silent prayer as a pair of sneakers squeaked down the hall, closer and closer and closer until they stopped just outside his locker. Psst! Hey, Jimmy, you still in there, man? The coast is clear. You sure? Jimmy whispered. I followed them all the way to the soda shop. They're gone, man. Jimmy torqued his shoulder around to reach the latch and opened his locker. Ralph shook his head at him. Man, I can't believe you stuffed yourself in your own locker. Better than getting pounded by Eric Kirkpatrick, Jimmy said when he had worked his way out. Now, I just sneaked down the back stairs and the doors down the hallway ka-chunked, and Jimmy froze. You sure they didn't follow you back? Jimmy whispered. Yeah, positive, Ralph said. Multiple sneakers squeaked their way closer. Pretty sure, Ralph amended. Run, Jimmy said, and the moment they took off, they heard the other sneakers pick up the pace. Jimmy and Ralph dashed out the back doors, leaped down the flight of stairs to the sidewalk, and flew down Crown Street. A quick glance back over his shoulder told Jimmy all he needed to know. Eric and his gang were after them. Split up, he cried when they hit the corner of Nostrand Avenue. Ralph took a right and Jimmy took a left toward Montgomery and Ebbets Field. At Ludlam Place, Jimmy ducked down the bottom steps of a brownstone and hid, knowing he couldn't outrun the gang forever. He did his best to fade into the stone wall of the stairwell as they ran past, and it seemed to work. He waited until they had turned the corner down the street just to be sure, then doubled back. As he ran home, Jimmy kept one eye on the sidewalks and one eye on the skies. He couldn't decide which was worse, Eric Kirkpatrick or the Russians.